everyone, and welcome back to the information bottleneck. And today we are going to talk about AI for science. And for this, we have Qichao Hu. He's the founder and the CEO of Molecular Universe. Is part of the SES AI. Hi, thank you for
Hello.
joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And as always, we have Ellen. Hey, Ellen.
Hi, Ravid. Hi, Qichao. Did I pronounce that right? Yep, cool. Well, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So, as I said, today we are going to have an episode about the AI for science, but we talked a bit before about your approach and how you think it's the best way to do research and to come with real products for AI of science. So maybe let's start with that. What do you think is the right approach to go forward, and how we can get better?
Sure. And in the industry, there's a saying like AI for science is still a tool, right? And then if you have the best shovel that can help you find a gold mine, do you really want to sell the shovel, or do you want to sell the gold? And I think now there are two types of companies within AI for science. There's those that come from the AI world, and there's those that come from the science world. So those that come from the AI world, and you guys interviewed a few on your podcast previously, they still develop a tool, a shovel. And then those that come from the science world, they're interested in the final product. They're interested in the gold, the precious metal that come out of that. So and these are very different perspectives. And I think if you look at those that come from the AI perspective, they focus a lot on developing the tool, these foundation models that a lot of them help you predict properties, like single molecule level, formulation levels, device levels. At different levels, they help you predict properties. And they're getting pretty good at these things. And then those that come from the science world, they have experience both successfully and unsuccessfully developing products. This could be a new material, a new drug, and new chemicals. They have a lot of that experience developing products, and then their goal is less on the tool, but using the tool to come up with a better product, and then use this tool to accelerate human scientists or potentially replacing human scientists so that they can come up with these products faster and then actually sell the products. So I think it's quite different perspective. And for us, we come from the science side. And SES AI in the past 14 years, we've been a developer of high energy density batteries. And then we never intended to start like an AI for science company. It was really out of serendipity. Back in 2017, we had this project with GM to put a very high energy density battery on a car. And then they were concerned about safety. So they said, okay, let's collect data. Let's collect the temperature, the voltage, the current, the pressure, once every 3 minutes, once every 1 minute, and then take that data and then train a machine learning model. This was 2017, right? And then so that you can monitor the health and then predict any type of incidents before they can happen. So that was the beginning how we started incubating this AI for science model. It was all product driven, and then so we started from device level property prediction. Then we went down even deeper to material level, to molecule level property prediction. And again, our focus has always been how we can use this shovel to find more gold. And because gold, I mean, you can sell shovels, maybe $10 a piece, or you can sell the gold. And I think we are seeing that the industry, the AI industry, is trending in that direction, is evolving from a model that's very good at having a conversation to now a very powerful tool, and eventually to the final product, because the final product is the one that has the highest value add.
But you think that like at the end, right, like how much the question is like how much expertise you need, right? Because like if now I develop a new model, AI model, right, I can solve like whatever, Anthropic can solve almost everything, but the question is like what is your like advantage, right? And it come up to prior knowledge or like level of expertise in this domain, right? So
So for example, another way to ask that question is, say you have the world's smartest scientists in whatever domain. What do you need to do from having that to a product? Say we have the world's smartest battery scientist today. That does not mean this person can come up with a better battery, right? So what is a workflow from having the world's smartest scientists in that domain to this product? So think of a lot of the foundation models developed by these general AI companies as trying to have this world's smartest domain scientists. They're not there yet, because even if they can train these models with all the publicly available data, there is so much domain-specific data that just don't exist, that no one has. But so the strength that we have compared to those that come from the pure AI side is domain expertise. And also, when I say domain expertise, I don't mean just like knowledge. I mean the ability to conduct workflow, the ability to collect a massive amount of high quality data that don't exist, that just don't exist. It's not even like they are hidden behind some private servers. I'm talking about the ability to collect high quality data that don't exist. And yes.
So what you actually, okay, now let's assume that like you have this like pipeline, but what are the problem that you actually try to solve?
So for example, what's needed to come up with a breakthrough? You start with an idea. So that's basically, you start with someone who's really smart, a person or a model who's really smart in that domain. But then you have to, say you come up with an idea, you have to synthesize the materials, the molecules. You have to test them in at different levels: molecule level, materials level, device level, final product level. You have to test them, and then all these tested results, these get sent back to your hypothesis and then validate that. So
But
yes.
like, but then what is the final goal that you're trying to do? Like you're doing all this pipeline, and what is the goal that you say, okay, now this is actually like a success?
So you start with a hypothesis and then you get a result. This process in the middle, without AI for science, if you do it in the traditional way, takes a long time. It could take a year, say on average a year for just one trial. And then say your rate of success is 40%. So you wait a year and then you do one trial, and then your rate of success is 40%. Now, if we can accelerate this to say 1 week, and then instead of doing one, we do 1,000 in parallel, then you've just increased your rate of success. So what we are doing is we are reducing the time for this workflow and also running multiple in parallel. So you can still have these hypotheses, but then you can get results and you can get feedback from this workflow much faster. And then so the single trial rate of success could still be 40%. But if you run thousands at the same time and you run once every week versus once every year, you've significantly increased your chance of actually finding a new molecule, a new device that's better than the current one.
Do you find that techniques that try to improve the diversity or creativity of outputs, for example, things like temperature with LLMs, do they have analogs in the kinds of AI for science that you're working on? And is improving the exploration phase and diversity phase really important to you right now?
It depends, and so yes and no. And for example, say you're trying to come up with a new product, and then you could stay with the current design, so not so diverse, and then you try to improve, and then you try to iterate, and then you'll probably achieve marginal improvement, which is a big deal in the product world. At the same time, you could also go and then select very exotic possibilities, things that have never been tried before, but also have not been proven to not work. So you could also try those, and then you could end up with very much larger improvements. For example, in the complex fluid, and that's the domain that we're in, complex fluids, and these have applications for energy storage, for semiconductor, for other applications. Within the complex fluid, you sort of know, for example, say batteries, the last 30 plus years, the entire global industry only looked at less than 1,000 molecules. So you could stay within those types of molecules and then try to improve, or you could select molecules that are totally different from what's being tried before, like way different. And then basically relax a lot of the filters that the conventional approach applied. So if you remove those, obviously your chance of failure goes up. At the same time, if you get any improvement, it could be something that's totally new.
So
Okay. So sorry, sorry. I guess the totally new kind of stuff that you're talking about, is there any like safety risks when we're talking about development of molecules? I ask this too because, you know, and we'll get maybe later in the call about like the model Fable release and stuff, but suddenly safety is on everybody's mind, and certainly in the context of anything involving biology or even chemistry, I think.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's an option that we have control over. Say you start with all the small molecules in the universe, that's 10 to the 60th, and then some of these are very toxic, and then some are banned by government. So you apply basic filters, and then you're down to 10 to the 12th, 10 to the 9th, and then the more filter you apply, obviously the whole goal of applying filters is to increase your chance of success. At the same time, you're also limiting your boundaries and the diversities of the universe of molecules that you're searching. And and of course, we apply these basic filters. So we remove anything that's on like a banned list, chemical list, things that could be used for like a bomb or like a terror things. So you filter those out, and then you're down to fairly benign set of molecules that you can further test.
how you filter them? Like, do you have like a closed list and you just like check against this list?
Both. There are lists published by different government agencies based on toxicity, also like weapons of mass destruction, chemical warfare, those things. You check against those lists, and also these materials. Even if your model predicts these materials, you can't really buy these materials anyways. So you filter these out, and then also there are more subjective filters, like do you want your molecule to have hydrogen? Do you want an aqueous material? Do you want a non-aqueous material? Do you want a solid material? Do you want a liquid material? These are more subjective that the human scientists would apply.
So, but like, what if like I don't know, like probably like there are like new molecules, right? Like new like components. So how you actually know in advance that these are like toxic or not? Or I
Yeah.
can, I know you, and or you, I can use them to generate a bomb. Whatever.
So you don't I mean, you can't know for sure, and basically what you can do is you go through the published list, make sure they're not on those, and then even the totally new molecules, you check for some properties, and then typically based on the properties, you can make predictions. Okay, is it toxic? Is a whatever. So you try your best, but of course, a lot of these could have other applications that you just don't know.
Okay, cool. So you talked before about, I want to go back to the optimization, like the acceleration. Like you talked before that you can, like, the goal is to accelerate something that takes a year to a week or something like that. So let's try to break it out to the different components, like how you're doing it.
Okay, so if you look at the workflow, you start with a scientist coming up with a hypothesis, and then that hypothesis goes to typically in complex fluids, you have molecule level, and then material level, and then final device level. These are the three levels. And then so step one, you come up with hypothesis. This takes someone with a lot of experience in this domain. And it's not
To
just
come
reading.
to come up with hypothesis, like, can you give us an example of like
Okay,
hypothesis?
for example, you're trying to develop a battery for EV, and then you need to improve the low temperature performance. Right now, this electric car, when you're at negative 30 degrees Celsius, the battery doesn't charge. So you need to come up with a battery that can charge faster at low temperature and last longer at low temperature. So say that's the problem you're dealing with. It could be other things. It could be coating materials, a car paint that lasts longer on the UV. It could be a variety of different applications. But you start with that. So you step one, you come up with hypothesis, and then that involves, for example, reading all the literature that's been published in this domain about this problem. You look at what the industry has done so far addressing this problem, and then you look at what's been done in the company, in the research team so far in the past couple of years about addressing this problem. What has worked, what has not worked, and then based on that, you come out with, say, 3 or 4 approaches. Based on all the success and failures that the industry and our own team had in the past, these are 3 or 4 hypotheses we can try to improve this.
So how you can come up with like this hypothesis? Is it like is it like a model, or like this is like you asking your scientist to do it? Like how you do it in practice?
So yeah, so this part we use mostly large language model, and then because a lot of the papers are in text format, and then also internal documentation records are in text format, and it's a mix of large language model and also some database machine learning model, because all the previous results are either in text or in some type of data, and then so we have this model that can ingest all the work that has been done before, and then it will come up with these recommendations. And also this part, even if you use like the frontier models out there, they do a pretty good job. If you ask that same question I just asked earlier, improve the low temperature fast charge for EV, to GPT, to Claude, to whoever, they do a pretty good job. Not as well as a domain specifically trained model, but they're fairly decent in coming up with these hypotheses.
And what
So yeah.
type of can you describe in like 3 different approaches? Like what like are the scope of these approaches? Like how does like these like solutions look like?
How does a solution look like
No,
in
like
terms of
I
what?
mean like you want to, I don't know, improve the efficiency of something, and then like you say, okay, so like one solution is like to design it like that, other solution is to design it like that, and like the third solution is to, I don't know, to construct it in other way, like these type of solutions.
Yeah. So for example, that problem I just mentioned, the hypothesis could include, for example, say the electrolyte material. You change from this formulation to this other formulation. You add additional materials to it, or it could be the battery design. You change the electrode thickness loading from this to that. Or it could be your charging protocol. You change from constant current to a mix of constant current, constant voltage at different range of state of charge. It will recommend these hypotheses.
So yeah, okay. So like you insert a question, and like now the model gives you three different solutions, and then what?
Yes, hypotheses, and then so that's what most of the frontier models would do currently. They'll give you hypothesis, but then nothing after that. So what we're trying to build, and I think what AI for Science tools should do is next you take these hypotheses. Say hypothesis number one. You try this new material as an additive in this existing material. So hypothesis number one, let's explore the entire universe of molecules that are suitable for improving low temperature fast charge, and then recommend the top 20, top 50 molecules, and then list out all these molecules, show us the structure, show us all the relevant properties, the energy levels, the melting point, the boiling point, is it liquid, is it solid, the shows all the properties. These are properties that can be computed and at the same time validated by experiments. Shows all these properties, and then for each of the top 50 molecules, try a range from 0.1% to 2% at 0.1% interval. So you've got about 20 different variations for each of the 20. So you have about 400 different formulations. And for each of the formulation, let's inject it into this device and then measure all the performance, the low temperature performance, the room temperature performance, the high temperature, the safety, measure all these performance, and then give me the output. So based on the output, for example, formulation number 313 indeed improves the low temperature performance, but then it hurts other performance. And formulation number 225, all the other performance are just the same, and then this low temperature is better. So rank all the formulations based on the device level performance, and then we can go back and then say, okay, we want to choose this particular formulation, and then so this workflow can be in traditional human-based lab. This would take a very long time, a year plus, because for each molecule, each of the 20 new molecules, you have to synthesize it. Not all these you can purchase, and then for each of the formulation, you have to make the battery, test it, and then actually generate all these results. But in this model, all this can be done automatically within a few weeks.
So wait, I'm not sure that I understand. Like, why? How it can be done automatically? Like at the end, you still need to generate, like, to synthesize these molecules. No.
So it's a mix. First of all, the model itself has been trained on a large amount of molecules with their properties. So first you can predict the properties of these molecules fairly accurately. And then once you have the molecule level predictions, then you can go to the material level property predictions. So you can predict all the properties at the molecule level and the materials level, and then use these as an input to your device level. And then you can predict the device level performance. So you can do all this without actually synthesizing or making anything, because the models have been trained on data, and it can very accurately make these predictions. So you do that, and then at the same time, so you do that, and then you have the top 20 molecules for each one, say 20, so total 400 formulations. You rank those. All this you can do without running any experiment. And then once you've ranked the top 400 formulations, then you can take the top, say, 20, and then this model is connected to what's called A lab, autonomous labs. And then this A lab will synthesize the molecule based on the input, and then it will formulate the materials, and then it will inject the materials into the device in the autonomous lab. And then this autonomous lab will produce the device and then test the device and then confirm the end result of the top 20 that you just listed out.
What do you think about the new Fable 5 from Anthropic and Mythos and the idea now that models will, the very best models for which you seem to mention having used for at least the ideation process a little bit, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's going to be significantly more control taken, and even data like possibly stored even when people try to use it on Bedrock. Are these things that you think are relevant for you, or like do you think that if in the components of your business that use LLMs you would want to move to competitors? Yeah.
So we are fairly model agnostic to in terms of some of the models that we use on the LM side. Also, for example, some of the property predictions. The property prediction, we have our own models, and we think ours are most accurate because we have trained them with our proprietary data. But then for a lot of the LLMs and then some of the foundation models, we're happy to use the new ones coming from external.
So, but do you think it will like push more like to, you know, specific models for specific types of things, right? Like for specific type of problems, and people will like now when you can't rely on Anthropic's models, you need like your own model for your own problem, and to have something that is independent.
Yeah. Yeah, so like a foundation model for everything, right? Like everything is gonna have its own foundation model. There's like a foundation model for batteries. There's like a foundation model for antibiotics. A foundation model for like basically everything is gonna have its own foundation model.
So what do you think like are the fundamental component for foundation model? Like let's assume that now I want to build a foundation model for X. What are the things that I actually need for that?
Good question. Okay, the way we see a foundation model is basically in any device, like mapping the device level performance to the most fundamental molecule level properties. There's a black box, and then this black box is described by this foundation model. So because at molecule level properties, those you can predict, compute fairly accurately, and then the device level performance you can test. So the input output we can get fairly easily, but it's connecting the two that's super hard. Batteries hard, other fields that's really hard. So I think a successful foundation model needs two things. You need the input output, so you need the fundamental molecule level properties very accurately computed, and the final device level performance very accurately measured, and these two sets of data connected. So, for example, if you have the device level performance data, you need to know specifically what molecules, what materials went into that device and their properties. So you need to have very high level, high fidelity input output data. This is one. And then second, even if it's imperfect, you need to have a very accurate physics-based model for describing what happens in this black box. For example, in the case of batteries, you have bulk properties which you can compute, and then there are these interfacial properties which are difficult to simulate, but we're trying to simulate. So, and as much as possible, if you have physics-based model that can describe all the chemical reactions, all the reactions, bulk and interface that take place in this black box. I think once you have those two, you can build a foundation model that fairly accurately simulates that black box.
And what do you think about world models then, and trying to model physics internally in the model's like weight space? Do you think that that's an important component of making these foundation models better for the kinds of predictions your company does?
I think it depends. If we talk about world models, if it's primarily Newtonian physics, like weights, and then things that we can physically experience, like a ball dropping from a table, I think that's less relevant. But if we're talking about world models at the material level, at the physics level, at the quantum chemistry level, and then all the reactions that take place at these very small scale, I think those would help a lot.
Do you think it's different because, like, I don't know, we need some physical observation about the world, and then, like, we need more, let's say, prior knowledge, than text, or like, in other words, like, what are the what components and what factors actually um, are important when you try to balance between like prior knowledge and like constraints of your model versus the data, collecting more data.
A lot of so I think for applications that are more of black magic, black art, this approach foundation model is more useful. For example, if you can come up with equations like a ball falling off of a table, that you can simulate with mathematical equations very accurately. So that you don't need to build a material foundation model for that. Like all you need to do is just take into account friction, gravity, like all that. But then in devices where you have a lot of chemical reactions happening that you cannot, or no one in the world has been able to fully characterize and simulate with mathematical equations, then this data become quite useful. So to answer your question, we rely on the using data to build such foundation model because we don't have a complete understanding of what happens in this box. So this lack of understanding, we try to bridge that gap with this foundation model.
And do you think there are like some specific areas that it will be more useful than others? Like, yeah, I get it. Like, if we have more understanding, but like, what types of areas you think we have more or less understanding of this black box?
So I think in areas where the reactions can be described, and like say it's a mechanical reaction, or if it's a physical reaction that can be described using equations, that's one thing. But when you have like chemical reactions, a lot of the complex chemical reactions can't really be described. For example, in the case of batteries, um, you can simulate, for example, ion diffusion between the molecules very accurately. But then what happens at the interface between like a cathode, anode, this solid electrode and the liquid electrolyte? What happens at the interface? There's electrochemical reactions happening. There are chemical reactions happening. No one has been able to figure that out. We've been working on batteries since the 70s, 80s. And then anytime people ask, okay, exactly what happens at the interface, they just kind of basically magic happens. And then there's a term being used called solid electrolyte interface, SEI. No one knows what happens there. No one knows what happens. Like so people know exactly in the solid how ions can diffuse. People know exactly in the liquid how ions can diffuse, but no one knows what happens. So at that interface.
But do you think do you feel it like it's important to I don't know, to put a lot of efforts in understanding this like intermediate phase, or do you think like if we have enough data, we'll just insert it to the model and the model will figure it out? Like I don't care, I don't know, I don't want even to understand like these details.
So I think I don't have an answer for that. And there's pros and cons. I think if we have enough data, we can probably build a foundation model that yes, without knowing what happens, it can simulate what happens. At the same time, if we can have a better physics understanding of what happens at the interface, then you can probably make better predictions to a lot of the outlier cases. I mean, how much data can you collect, right? And then over what diversity? You can probably collect data over a finite set of diverse chemistries. But what if someone comes along with something that's never been tested before, that's outside of your data set that you tested? How reliable is this going to be if you don't have a good physics-based understanding? So I don't have an answer in terms of one is more important than the other at this point, because at this point we don't have neither. The foundation model isn't there yet, and the physics understanding isn't there yet. So we are pursuing both, and I think if one of them gets developed earlier, then we can probably say, okay, this one indeed works better than the other.
And do you have like I don't know, a guess which one will develop better?
So the foundation model we have more control over because that's just brute force. If you have resource, just like generate data, and then you have control over that. Physics-based, that's kind of back to human innovation, human breakthrough. Sometimes it's like luck. Maybe next week, maybe 3 years from now. So yeah.
Okay. You mentioned the simulation, and so what's your take about simulation? Do you think it's useful in this case? Do you think like you can actually like learn from it, or do you feel it like the real data is the important one?
I mean, a lot of times it's just not feasible to collect the same order of magnitude in real data as you can simulate. For example, we can easily simulate 10 to the 8th, 10 to the 9th data at material level, but then to actually run experiments, even with the best autonomous labs and then high throughput, all that, maybe 0.1% of that, or even less. So the and obviously the experimental result are the best. It's just throughput wise, you can get to the same level as you can with simulation. So one thing we found, if we simulate, say 3 orders of magnitude higher than the actual experimental result, and then you take the actual experimental result and then use that to calibrate the simulated data, you can improve the accuracy of the simulated data. And then you use the calibrated simulated data to train these models. So because to really train these models, you need to have the order of magnitude, that scale that you just cannot achieve with actual data. So we take about 0.1% in actual data and use that to calibrate the simulated data.
When you talk about simulation, I recall we had I'm forgetting the name. We had a guest on who had a lot of experience with their background was they were Korean, and we discussed the medical system there, and he proposed these like continuously running medical trials. And this actually seems quite similar to some of the stuff you've talked about here with the development of like molecules. I'm wondering, do you believe that the medical system would be really amicable to techniques like this? I mean, it seems like drug discovery, molecule discovery, and all of these are really similar kind of things. But like, what kind of problems do you see with more adoption in the medical research community?
There definitely is quite a bit of overlap between the life science and the material science. For example, some of these autonomous labs, the fundamental modules are actually quite similar. For example, when you are doing drug discovery, you have pipettes, and then you select different mixtures between liquid solid. You also do the same in material science. There's quite a lot of overlap at the robotics design, the module level between the autonomous labs used for life science and also for material science. I think the key difference might be, for example, in material science, your result feedback is faster because you can conduct the experiment. So you run the simulation, you run the autonomous lab, and you get a result, and you can do that. You can provide the feedback faster. But in life science, your final device is probably a human, right, or like a mouse before that. So that validation process, even if you try to automate that, if you can, most likely will take much longer than if the device is just a battery or some specialty chemicals.
Okay, that's good to hear. Yeah, I'm always surprised at how much connection there is between like techniques from bioinformatics and stuff used in modern machine learning. Yeah, and material science. You talked earlier about the automated labs side for running experiments. I'm curious, what do you think about robots for assisting in running material science experiments? And influenced by the advancements from companies like Unitree. There's so many more, and I don't feel like there's any clear leader, nor do I feel like robotics have gotten anywhere near to the same quality as that of, I guess, foundation models. So do you think that will assist in the development of material sciences and AI for science?
So, within the robotics world, and we work with a lot of them. You have these humanoids, and also you have industry robots. And autonomous labs use a lot of these industry robots. And then this field has improved very rapidly. And then doesn't matter if it's life science or material science. For example, a simple action like solid liquid mixture, right? You need to accurately measure the solids, measure the weight of the liquid, and then mix them at and also precisely um, uh, put that drop inside certain vials. This field has improved a lot. Maybe like even just 2 years ago, a lot of the robotics, the industry robotics, if they were trying to do solid liquid mixture, the weight will be off, or some of the liquids will fall outside of the vials, and then also it will shake. But a lot of these precision stabilities have been resolved, and then so now a lot of the workflow and the data that you can finally rely on these robotic arms to actually perform these mixtures. And then once they can do that, for example, a simple autonomous lab can probably formulate 5 times to 7 times the amount of formulations that a human scientist can. And it's just a simple one. And then you can replicate that. You can have 10, 50, 100 of that. You can have a whole floor of these autonomous labs running 24/7, and that's not possible with humans.
So,
That makes a lot of
what do you think
sense.
are the
Um,
yeah? What do you think are the current bottlenecks in the entire process? And also, like, what do you think from this bottleneck? What do you think actually like will be solved in the near future? And what are the real bottlenecks that are much harder to solve?
I mean, I think the real bottleneck is still in this foundation model for everything. This is still hard. For example, so you start with a hypothesis. These hypotheses are based on known knowledge. The model is not able to come up with a hypothesis based on something that doesn't exist yet. So, and what I mean by that is these hypotheses are kind of reviewed based on what's been done. They are not really new ideas. So that we found to be a big difference. For example, if we ask our best human scientists, how do we solve this problem? And you ask the same problem to a model, the model will tell you what's been done before. It will summarize that. So to someone that's like entry level, mid level, it's very useful. But to someone that's already at the frontier of this product, that's not good enough. You want someone to actually come up with something new, something that has not been done before. So that we found is a bottleneck. Like, so we're a bit disappointed by how novel the hypotheses are from these models. Like all these things have been done before. And the second is this foundation model. So again, mapping the fundamental molecule level properties to the final device level performance. This foundation model, this is so difficult and this is so critical. And I think we're quite close to having this foundation model for batteries, but then you got to do this for every other domain. Yes, I think yes.
But like these are what are the missing parts there? Do you think like this is the data that you just need more data, or this sound like more fundamental, or like something in our understanding? Like why you think like the mapping is not like fully complete?
I think data and data is actually really hard to get, and even like large domain expertise companies like us, we've been in the battery space for 14 years. Some other larger companies in chemical space and in all these domains, even if they have 10 years, 20 years, they will say, oh, we have lots of data. But when you actually sit down and then you actually look at the data, one, the data is messy. No one has like a significant volume of high quality data that links the material level properties and the device level performance. Like you will have a lot of data, but then it's like for say you have data on material A, and then you have data on device that use material C. That's not so useful. You really need data on material A, the properties, and device level performance that use material A, and then also track all the conditions, the environments in between. So that's also where autonomous lab plays a role. Is once you take humans out of this data generation process, you can document every little detail, the material level properties, also how the data was collected. So you have high fidelity in the data. I think this is a big bottleneck. A lot of the larger material science chemical companies, what they don't realize is, yes, they've been around for 10 plus years, 20 plus years. Their data historically have been poor quality, just too poor, too messy to train a good foundation model. So actually, a lot of them now realize that actually after 15, 20 years, they need to start collecting new data from scratch, using entirely new protocols, using entirely new robots.
Do you think like when you say noisy or like messy, what do you actually mean? Like, do you think this is something that like that's related to the protocol, or do you think this is something like that's related to the I don't know the how they measure it, or like to the because you have a lot of different options?
Almost all of the above. For example, say for each material, you need to collect 23 properties. For each device, you need to collect 47 properties. So one, you have incomplete data. You probably have 7 or 8. You have incomplete. You did not collect all the data. And then second is the labeling. This device, did you actually properly label the performance? And then did you trace this back to the molecule level? So labeling and traceability are kind of connected. And then if this device had this poor performance, was it actually because you put material A inside? Or was it because you put material B inside, but then you somehow had an issue in the process? And then so the labeling and incomplete data and messy labeling.
Do you use like data labeling companies, or and what about like weak supervision and other techniques for handling probabilistic labels? Are these things that are relevant for your use cases?
We do use that, and we don't use third party as much. And there's another issue. One is there aren't a lot of good third party that really know this particular domain type of data. And also, second is once you get to such sensitive stuff, it's like your internal stuff. You don't really want to share this with anyone outside. So no, we use our own resource for this.
And do you
And do you
use
think
like most sorry, do you do like mostly post training, or is it like pre training? And what do you think about these post training versus pre training techniques?
On the LLM.
Well, even for your foundation models, right? That are like the smaller models you described too. Like, do you end up using like low rank adapt? I guess it's mostly. I'm still thinking like LLMs, but you do use LLMs in parts of it. So I guess even if it's only relevant for LLMs.
So yeah, on the foundation models, we start from scratch. So the pre-training. On the LLM, we recently started doing post-training. And but that goes back to the fables question you asked earlier. We found doing these post training on these large LLMs to be less fruitful because the LLMs themselves progress so fast. But the starting from scratch and then pre-training on the foundation models, that's definitely very critical.
so? What are the problems? Like, what? So you said like, what are the problems in the training process? Like, so one is the lack of data. Are there any other problems that you found out?
I think data is probably the biggest problem, and it's really hard to get data that you can trust. That basically does all the things that we mentioned earlier. And then if you don't have that, then you end up with models that are just not so accurate.
Do you think like
But yeah,
better models will improve it? Like better like training techniques, all the recent progress in I don't know, post-training, for example, or like even pre-training, right? There are a lot of like new techniques, like how to do it properly, how to stabilize the training process, a lot of different things. Do you find it helpful or not?
we haven't seen that. We haven't seen that. I mean, we definitely hope that one day the training will become would improve so that you don't need to have such data. Um, at the same at the same time, like our benchmark is, can this model predict like a new material that's 10%, 20% better than the previous material? So our benchmark is at the final output product level, and then so far we haven't seen like a new training that's so good that would reduce the need for better quality data.
How you actually like evaluate it? Like you have the final output, that's fine. And like the final product output, as you said. Like are there any other like measurements or like the different levels of abstraction that you can measure your quality?
Um, Yeah, for example, at the material level property prediction, that is one thing we track, and then just basically benchmark how accurate the properties predicted by the model versus the actual properties measured by experiments. That's a key thing. The molecule level, material level, we use these as proxies. If these property prediction models are not accurate, then obviously your final results are going to be further and further away.
And what about evals? Like, how do you evaluate success with material sciences in general?
How do you evaluate success with material
With
science?
like the AI for science, like I know we've talked about it a little bit more, but especially in the context of making publishable research in a journal, I'm not very familiar with the norms that the material science journals or conference community has. But how do you verify and I guess convince people, maybe even in peer review, that results obtained this way are valid?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, so there's both. From a publication perspective, if you have a a property prediction model that's indeed very accurate compared to the actual experimental value, then that's something that you can publish. So here are the actual data from the lab. Here is predicted results from our model versus predicted result from other open source model that you can publish. That's actually quite common, and we do that. But also the ultimate way to evaluate that is the final device that contain such materials. If you can actually achieve an improvement, then that's the ultimate evaluation. And a lot of times that does not get published. And then also a lot of times you'll have different tiers of models. You have a very good model, and then you publish that. Okay, so we use our B plus model, and then we achieve a property prediction more accurate than the best open source benchmark. But then internally we have an A model that actually help us discover new molecules. Then that A model we're not going to publish because we want to sell the final product.
What do you think in general about publications? It like I know from one hand like it gives you some credibility, and from other hand like it's a lot of effort, and also like it's like other people can like use your ideas. So how you feel
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah. We don't do that much publication. We tend to focus more on the final product. But also, I think people in this industry tend to focus a lot on publication, like recruiting, hiring scientists. They do. A lot of the scientists in this industry do want to publish. So we try to balance that. We try not to make anything open source, like not the source code, but we publish some of the benchmark testing.
But do you feel that like this is important for the field, or like because as you said, right, a lot of people are like scientists and they are coming, to get like some like progress to the field and like to improve the field in general. Like, do you feel something like that, or you say no, I'm like a company, I have a product, and now I just want to have a better product, right?
So I think it is important for some of the foundation models. So when I say foundation model, I don't mean the final foundation model. I'm talking about, for example, say molecular dynamics simulation, force field, a new, faster, more accurate way to do DFT. Like these things, I think the industry should definitely continue to publish and then make the best models open source, because these would help everybody. It will help us. It will help people in life science, in specialty chemicals, in other fields. So this is definitely helpful, like having some of the latest computation chemistry models being open source and being debated on, being peer reviewed and published. And then different companies in different domains will use these and then develop their domain specific foundation models. So for example, you can have a general foundation model for complex fluids and then have that published. And then you have a domain, say battery domain specific foundation model. That's company proprietary.
Okay, we're almost out of time. Like, just one more question. In, I don't know, 5 years from now, like 10 years from now, do you think is the lab will be mostly autonomous, or is this always like, human in the loop?
I think 5 years from now, the lab will be autonomous. It's almost like in manufacturing, right? Like you manufacture a device, you used to have lots of workers, and now it's more autonomous, and the throughput is higher, yield is better, cost is lower, quality is higher. So I think I think in 5 years, labs will be autonomous in the sense that we actually want people to be out of the loop, because then the data is more reliable. But you'll still have people in the loop, not in the lab, but in the, I would say, especially in the ideation process, because you still need a human to kind of steer the direction. you have a question, and then the model will come up with hypotheses. Some are known, some are totally new, and then you need a human to steer that. Okay, am I trying to develop a very novel product where cost doesn't matter? Am I trying to develop a product that's fast, that's more near term, where cost matters, scalability matters? So you still need like a human project manager to steer the ideation. But once that's done, the lab itself will be autonomous.
Okay. I think we're out of time. Do you have anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, I think again, AI for science is like, do you want to sell the shovel, or do you want to use the shovel and then actually find the gold yourself? And I think we're more and more moving towards the latter. If we can actually find the gold, obviously you want to control the gold. And I think we're moving quite close to that. And it's a combination of the models are getting more accurate, and also the most important part is autonomous lab, the ability to generate high fidelity, high throughput data that we can trust to train these models and workflows. So we think that really is going to be a very critical piece going forward.
I agree. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Yeah, it was a
everyone.
pleasure.
Thank you.